All right, what's going on, guys? It's Vince. I'm back. We're doing another blog post today, May 30th. This came out, so this one I've actually gotten to on time today, but it's a summer sweep up for combat and loot, and I'm pretty excited about it. So I glanced over it a little bit, but for the most part, it's gonna be mainly all new stuff for me as well. And this just plays back into what I said with revisiting old content, polishing up things that maybe weren't polished up in the first place on release, or maybe they just didn't have the staff to do it at the time. So, following in the footsteps of last year's Project Rebalance, we're taking some time to improve some more existing content. In some cases, those improvements are just small tweaks, while others might benefit more from the drastic changes. This blog has a healthy helping of both. If you'd rather have something to listen to or watch along as you make those gains, check out this video made in collaboration with Coxie and Pac for a top level overview of everything we're changing. So you have a video you can watch instead of mine. Lovely. Projects like this one allow us to take feedback we've seen over months or even years and use it to improve the very foundations of the game. Again, love stuff like this, as long as it's done right. So we'll see. On the other hand, we know that big changes can engender big feelings, so we invite you all to let us know how you feel about what we're proposing today. Although we're not polling any of these improvements. Wow, really? None of these are pulled. In line with our polling charter, we remain open to feedback and will make adjustments where necessary, just as we did with Project Rebalance. Speaking of, this first change might seem familiar. It looks like the first thing we have is elemental weaknesses and NPC defense changes. We have nice little Royal Titans with the elemental spells. Elemental weaknesses brought back the old school magic of using the right tool for the job. Quite literally. Since this was such a drastic shift, we played it safe at first. After a year of watching you enjoy the first batch of weaknesses, we thought it was time to introduce some more. We're especially interested in feedback about whether the elements we've chosen make sense as weaknesses for the monsters they're attached to. We've tried to choose thematic weaknesses wherever possible while maintaining game balance. We want to hear about monsters you feel are misplaced or monsters you feel we've missed. On that note, the wonderful Gentle Tractor reached out to us last year with some great feedback, which has served as a North Star for this set of tweaks. Shout out Gentle Tractor. We'll go through them element by element, although of course we'll miss out any monsters who already have an elemental weakness. You might also notice that some of the adjusted monsters still aren't worth using elemental spells on. Keep in mind that we're not drastically redefining the meta here, we're just rolling out weaknesses that make sense thematically. This also gives us room to take elemental spells to the next level in the future via new rewards or specific encounter design. For a full list, click here to visit the relevant tab on our spreadsheet, and they have a little link there. So first up, air weaknesses. Mastery over air gives you an edge versus an enemy who relies on cheap tactics like floating or flying. Strong gusts of wind can throw your opponents off balance, making them especially susceptible to air spells. In planar terms, we've added air weaknesses to things that fly and things that aren't quite corporeal, including birds, bats, devils of every variety, wyverns, ghasts, banshees, shades, and more. The most noteworthy NPCs are Zarpus, the thermonuclear smoke devil, the phantom muspah, and a handful of quest enemies. Aside from the numerous additions to this category, there are also a couple of changes. Worms are now weak to air instead of earth, skeletons are now weak to earth instead of air, and zombies are now weak to fire instead of air. So the zombie ones make sense, skeletons make sense, and worms, I guess if they're flying, make sense to do air. Skeletons, because of the like coming out of the ground is what I imagine, and then zombies because they're zombies. That one just kind of fits in my opinion. So yeah, that seems pretty cool. Adding a bunch of stuff here that are flying, and then some more notable bosses like Zarpus, Thermi, and Phantom Muspah. Water weaknesses, perhaps a little more readily apparent than air weaknesses. Anything that feels particularly fiery, including demons from the fiery depths of Infernus, will take some serious damage from water spells. Let's see who's hot and who's not. Hopefully, for a lot of you, these aren't any changes to NPCs with existing weaknesses here, just a slew of new water weaknesses for you to make use of. Chief among these are all the Tazar creatures, including Jad and Zuck, Orkath, the King Black Dragon, the Great Olm, Krill, and his generals, Cerberus, Scotizo, alongside hordes of quest-related NPCs like Agrith Nar, Nezekchend, Farid Flambede, and the ferocious Elvarg. So you're going to be able to use water spells on these, and they're going to have a weakness to them, which is pretty cool. There's a couple in here that, in my eyes, don't make the most sense. So right off the bat, like Vorkath is like an ice dragon, so I don't see like water doing much. I see more of like fire for Vorkath. And the King Black Dragon, like, I mean, I guess he's kind of fiery, but like, I don't know. It's a dragon. I don't like water weakness doesn't really make too much sense. Like King Black Dragon, Great Olm, and Vork, these three don't seem like they fit a ton in my eyes, but the rest, like Jadzluck, Krill, Cerberus, Scotizo, I guess. Scotizo seems more neutral to me though, but especially those three don't really seem all that like weak to water. But all right, that's my little feedback for that. Next, you have Earth weaknesses. Up against an enemy with an exterior that's too tough to crack, try slamming some Earth magic into it. In our first go-around, Earth weaknesses were perhaps the least utilized. We're adding a mountain of new NPCs to this list, focusing on NPCs with hard exteriors or creatures who rely on water, which is readily soaked up by your Earthy Blast, making these aquatic creatures highly susceptible. Drakes and Guardian Drakes have been moved into this category, since their rock-solid defense makes them feel more similar to metallic draconids than chromatic ones. For similar reasons, mountain trolls and the tough-skinned giant mole have had their weaknesses adjusted to Earth. So those seem fine, at least kind of at face value. There are a lot of additions here, encompassing golems, gargoyles, water fiends, jellies, trolls, crabs, and more. The most interesting among these are the alchemical hydra. Okay. Dawn, Dusk, Giant Mole, Kraken, and a variety of quest NPCs. See, this seems a little bit more appropriate. Again, like dragons being weak to like certain elemental spells seems a little weird, but other than that, like Giant Mole, Kraken, I could see those being weak to Earth. And lastly, we have the fire weaknesses. These are arguably the most intuitive of any weaknesses here. Icy stuff melts. Naturey stuff like plants and bugs burns to a crisp. Simple. Yeah, I mean, fire has always been pretty obvious ones. So, despite this one being so intuitive, there's a lot more that we could have done with these weaknesses initially. We've not got any changes to NPCs who already have a weakness here, but we've got a lot of additions. Most worth keeping an eye on in this category are Bryophyta, Spori, the Calphite Queen, Seracnus, Venenatus, Spindle, Scorpia, Niloca's, Verzix, Spider, Niloca's form, and Skeletal Wyverns. We mentioned them earlier, but as a reminder, zombies now sit neatly in this category since their rotting flesh burns right off, so feel free to incinerate them with impunity. That's a wrap on this batch of elemental weaknesses. Like we said before, we're not looking to rock the boat or drastically change metas. Instead, we're aiming to make sure that the system feels like it works where you'd expect it to. Open up more options for you to make interesting decisions while progressing, and leave us room for cool rewards in the future that interplay with these weaknesses. Yeah, I mean they did this last year with the I think it was like Project Rebalance. That's what they said, right? Yeah, Project Rebalance. So they're just kind of expanding on that, adding more for the elemental weaknesses, which is pretty cool. So mostly pretty good. So big shout out. So next we have the NPC defense changes. Beyond elemental weaknesses, you'll notice on the spreadsheet linked above, or here if you don't feel like scrolling, that we're taking a pass at some other NPCs and exaggerating their weaknesses where appropriate. To do this, we're making further use of the light standard heavy system for range defenses, tweaking the typical stab/crush defenses in spots, and rolling out the flat armor system first used at Perilous Moons on very few select NPCs. Flat armor is the most interesting thing here. If you're not in the know, a flat armor value of 2 means an enemy takes 2 less damage than you would have hit, meaning if you hit a 10, they'll only receive 8 damage. Negative flat armor value means the enemies take more damage per hit. In practice then, an enemy with positive flat armor might encourage slower hitting weapons, or weapons with fewer hit spots. while enemies with negative flat armor encourage fast-hitting weapons or weapons with numerous hit splats like the scythe or the dual Makui Hodl. Realistically, we aren't likely to say, this NPC has 20 flat armor, hope you brought your Elder Maul, but it's a small bouncing lever that we can tweak to nudge things one way or the other. Similar to the more traditional defensive stats, similar to the more traditional defensive stats. Yeah, I mean, that's really good. It gives them more control over what weapons they want to be like good at certain bosses. Like I look at, like they were saying, where is it? Like might encourage slower hitting weapons with fewer hit splats, or fast hitting weapons with numerous hit splats like the scythe or the dual Maquiados. Like that's kind of that flexibility that they'll now have because they have flat armor in the game. Realistically, we aren't likely to say, okay, we got that part. In cases where we've introduced positive flat armor to an NPC, we're bumping HP down slightly so that kill time isn't likely to change considerably, while your existing setup may slightly favor a change in setup. So, okay. So just a little bit of flat armor and defense tweaks there. At this stage, we've taken a very light touch approach to any flat armor antics and focus more on traditional defensive stats, but we'll be keeping a close eye on how these changes feel in practice, or even thoughts you might have at this preliminary stage. Yeah, I mean, this seems pretty cool. Again, like it's cool that it encourages like slower, faster hitting weapons, and that it gives them that flexibility and that customizability to monsters on top of like the already typical like melee range defenses when it comes to like stab slash crush and the light standard heavy system that we have. Next, oh boy, this will be interesting. Loot table changes. If you tuned into any of our RuneFest content, you knew this one was coming. Yeah, sorry about that. Before we get into specifics, let's talk about the why for this section. One of the many drivers behind an undertaking like this is an effort to bolster gameplay variety in the present and in the future. The primary goal behind tweaks to loot tables should be better setting up our delicate economy to provide more ebb and flow interactions where players seeking profit are encouraged to move between activities as their GP output fluctuates over time. Yeah, I mean, I can think of a couple of numerous things, but this is definitely a good way to kind of revisit stuff, polish old content, and keep the integrity and the economy in a good spot for the future. Another important factor is that some resource drops are oversaturated, entering the game in either too high a quantity or from too many sources, which diminish their value over time. Chaos runes are a great example here. They're reasonably well balanced across the activities where they're obtained, but the sheer quantity and number of sources for them mean their value is weakened. So from a GP per hour perspective, none of the loot tables that feature chaos runes are really benefiting from having them in the first place. Yeah, I mean, that kind of just makes sense, right? It talks about, like we talked about item sinks in the last video. It almost kind of goes back to that, where you just get so many of something that it just absolutely tanks the value, and now it's not worth anything, even though you're getting a lot. So it's great to go and get them so you can use them, but they're so cheap it just doesn't even matter in terms of GP per hour. With the above in mind, we've done some digging into spots where a single activity fulfills too many economic needs and in turn introduces too high a percentage of a specific resource relative to other activities. As an example, consider the torsal seeds used to sell for north of 50,000 GP to other players. Following the addition of Phantom Muspa and Tombs of Amasket, the supply of torsal seeds rose drastically, and they now fetch a comparatively meager 6,500 GP. The knock-on effect of this is that for a future table to have a good torsal seed drop, meaning one that has a similar GP value to good torsal seed drops at the time of release for Tombs of Amasket or Phantom Muspa, we'd have to drop almost 8 times as many and continue snowballing the plummeting price of torsal seeds. Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, right? Like, I think a lot of times, and players bring it up all the time, so I kind of wish they would listen or, like, retroactively look at what this is actually going to do and play test content. But, like, people say all the time, like, you get so many of these seeds from things like Phantom Muspa and Tombs of Amasket that, like, it just tanks the cost. And they don't revisit this until years later, where the prices, like they said, like I mean that's like what nine, it's like eight and like roughly 8.5 times cheaper than before. I mean that's ridiculous. So like it's okay if it goes down a little bit because so many people are doing it, but not by 8.5 times. I mean, I remember like especially doing teams of Masket, you'll get a drop and it's like, oh, here's 24 Torsal Seeds, and it's like as an iron that feels great, but like relax, like take a step back and just think about like the implications of the shit, dude. It's so bad. Like I don't know if they need to like hire someone to specifically focus on loot tables, but it's so ridiculous sometimes the stuff you see when it comes to this stuff. We can't just keep dropping more of something without ruining certain economies. Yeah, no shit. So we're forced to give players drops that may feel weak from in terms of GP value, which leads to dissatisfaction. Yeah, so don't do it in the first place. It's just again, just need like you need to have the foresight to this. It's great that we're like revisiting it and changing it. I would love that we have a team that does this, but like have the foresight before shit like this happens. Like we saw this with the I can go on a fucking rant so bad here, but we saw this with like Yama with the oath plate drop rates where they made it. They didn't think that again because they didn't play test it enough that people were gonna get kills as quick as they did. So they were like, hey, like I feel like it was like a little kid with like, hey, like asking for candy, like, hey guys, like we didn't realize that you were gonna kill it so quick, and too many oath plate pieces are coming into the game, so we're gonna buff the or sorry, we're gonna nerf the drop rates. Is that okay? And everyone was like, no, it's not okay. Versus like if it's too rare and you buff the drop rates, now everybody's happy. Now everyone's like, oh sweet, it's more common. And it's this like psychological shift where it's like you need to shift it where it benefits the player. So on release, like it's okay if an item is just too rare. And then they say, hey, sorry, this is a little too rare. We're gonna make it more common. People are gonna be like, cool, great, love that. Versus if it's super common and you go the other way and it's like, hey, now this is harder to get. Everyone just loses their shit. So like play test. Oh my god, like fucking play test this stuff, and it's okay if you buff the drop rates on certain things, but nerfing it always feels bad from like a psychological standpoint. So like they, oh my god, they need to just play test this stuff and work on it so that sort of stuff doesn't happen. And especially when it comes to the stuff like a torsal seed, or I guess torsal seeds from Phantom Muspa and TOA, like look at that shit ahead of time and have the foresight to be like, sorry, like we're not gonna add this money for a drop. Like they plummeted so many items because they just don't look at things first. Oh, where was I? I was at the dissatisfaction. Yeah. Torsal seeds are only one drop, but you can see that if this applied to every suitable drop we have in game, we'd end up having core loot tables that don't feel very rewarding and likely have to fill in gaps with alcohols, which furthers inflation. Also not good. Yeah. Again, learn from this and make changes in the future. Like please. I love that they revisit it, but you can very much prevent this from happening in the first place. There may be some Iron players reading this and worrying about feeling starved of resources all of a sudden, but we don't believe that that should be the case. No, I'm not worried about that. I mean, one, if you've done this already, you're fine, and two, like it's fine. I'm not worried about it. It's more of just like, hey, instead of getting 28 torsal seeds, you might get like 10. From an economic perspective, even a small nerf in the supply of something like torsal seeds from a handful of places can have huge benefits on their value, and we reckon we can make economically significant changes without having irons feeling a squeeze or resource shortage. Excuse me. Now that we're all on the same page, you should be well equipped to read through all of the specifics. These are too many to list neatly here, particularly with our blog having a character limit. So you'll have to check out this handy spreadsheet featuring nerfs, buffs, or more complex adjustments to a variety of runes, herbs, seeds, gems, and fish. I'm actually going to click on this just to see. I guess it's like a, looks like it's a Excel sheet. Mm-mm-mm. And especially at Zora, Muspa, Vorkath, Laren's chest, Brimstone chest, they drop the drop rate for the food, specifically manta rays, sea turtles, and okay, just manta rays and sea turtles were reduced by 75%. That removed drop rate is then replaced with a shark drop. When this shark drop is hit, it's 50-50 whether you get sharks or twice as much shark chum. Okay. And then at Grotesque Guardians, Drakes, and Thermi, they buffed the rate to get sharks, so you'll get sharks a little bit more often. Okay. Anyway, two things to note as you're checking out the spreadsheet. Shark chum is similar to diabolic worms being an anglerfish rate enhancer, except for sharks. We believe this kind of significant rate enhancer should help add more variety into gathering skills like fishing, while still being profitable to sell on if obtained as a drop. Yeah, I love this. Revisiting old content and even making something like sharks easier to fish if you get shark chum. I think this in general should be the way we go when it comes to drops from bosses. So instead of just getting like here's 200 shark, like no, give me shark chum for most of these drops. Give me something like that where it's like, hey, you're gonna go fish these materials, but you're gonna get them 3 times as fast, 4 times as fast, whatever they want to decide. That way it just plays this nice back and forth with PVMers and skillers where the PVMers, at least for mains anyway, irons is different, but for mains they can say here's a bunch of shark chum, go fish sharks at a quicker rate, and then you do that and you make money quicker. So and then for irons obviously you're just getting resources quicker. So to be clear, we're not looking to roll out some kind of skill enhancer for every gatherable resource. We'd like to experiment with more of them for high level resources specifically so that we can tone down on raw drops. Yeah, agreed. But don't ever want to get to a point of players feeling like it's not worth doing X skill without Y skilling enhancer from Z boss. That's not fun for anybody. Yeah, yeah, that's very much on par and where the game needs to be. So, like they said, tone down on raw drops. Um, but enhance kind of gathering skills as a whole, but not to the point where you feel like it's not worth doing. So, notably absent from this list is Soul Wars. In simple terms, we're more or less eviscerating the loot here. Mini games like this, where players can effectively determine their own rates of output, just cannot be allowed to be lucrative. We were quick to respond to the Castle Wars grades being too strong, and we've taken far too long to make this change. We'll be taking a Castle Wars-esque approach to Spoils of War with some blighted supplies on offer and replacing the Castle Wars specific ammo with pure essence, but at significantly lower GP value per crate. Pet hunters, you're safe. The pet rate here will remain as is, and the time to obtain will remain the same. So yeah, again, overall really good stuff for the loot table changes. I just hope that like moving forward, this teaches them how to balance loot tables more. I know that they're not perfect. They're people at the end of the day too that are putting in time and working, and a lot of them, if they're newer to the game, are still learning what works and what doesn't. So I really like that they're not afraid to revisit old content and make adjustments and polish this game that we all love. So ooh, this should be pretty fun. This is crazy to me. This came out years ago and we're still making changes to this because they botched so much of this stupid fucking raid. Like, oh my god, I like the fights itself in this raid, but like as a whole, this oh my god, this raid has so much wrong with it. I cannot believe they're still polishing this raid years later. Old School's third raid feels like it released only yesterday, when in actual fact it's been almost 3 years since we set foot in the tombs of a Masket. While we announced at RuneFest that Raids 4 is on the books for 2026, we'd like to make some adjustments to TOA and set it up for success down the line. First, we'll detail changes that we'd like to make to the raid itself. They focus on the puzzle rooms and the bosses. You should just fucking scrap the puzzle rooms. After that, we need you to help point us in the right direction for what we believe are some much needed loot adjustments. So I actually think instead of adjusting the puzzle rooms, what you should do is when you first enter the Tombs of Masket, before you get to this room, right? Give me a random puzzle. I don't really care which one it is. And realistically, If it's the Baba one, people are just gonna leave. So, actually, I'm gonna make a slight adjustment to that. Instead of it being when you first come in, make it so when you go to the wardens, there's just a random puzzle at the end before you do wardens, right? So instead of having to do 4 puzzles before each room, you can just hop in all 4 of these boss fights, go kill Baba, go kill Kefri, go kill Zabek, go kill Akka, and then before you fight wardens, before you can even get to that room, it's gonna give you a random puzzle. So it is gonna feel bad when you get like the Baba puzzle, but I know they're gonna make changes to that as well. So maybe it won't feel as bad moving forward. But literally, just give me 1 random puzzle before wardens. That way, you can keep the puzzles in the game because you made them. But doing 4 puzzles, 1 before each room, and then wardens is just it's so fucking time consuming for no reason. Anyway, TOA boss changes. Start off with Baba. Currently, the most effective way to kill Baba for most players is to use the infamous Red X method to avoid Baba using attacks. You'll give up some DPS to do this, but put yourself in a position of absolute safety so long as your timing is on point. We're always fans of emergent and creative gameplay, but think where Baba sits right now is pretty dull, and we'd like to change the pacing of the fight a little to make the core experience more engaging, which might make Red X a little less necessary. Again, all these changes are unpulled, by the way. This is things they're bringing into the game. I mean, they're going to look at feedback, but like they're not pulling anything. Protect from melee now mitigates all damage at Baba. Love that. Unless invocations which reduce the effectiveness of protection prayers are activated. That's fantastic. That's lovely. I love that, to be honest. That's really nice. That way you don't feel like you have to Red X. Baba spawns fewer baboons, which will die after 1 hit from any attack style. I like that too. Jungle Japes is turned on. We see you running your banana 5s. Then baboons will drop more bananas on death to account for the reduced number of baboons. Damage from thrown debris is now fully shifted onto anything you split the damage with, boulders and sarcophagi alike, which should make things a little less frantic. Yeah, I really like that, to be honest. I have to revisit TOA still. I got my shadow spooned. You can flame me in the comments. But I have to go back there to get Masori and my ward still. So that's really nice. I love the protect from melee thing. I'm a huge hater of chip damage, so things like that where it just mitigates all damage. Like I want to be, you can have a little chip damage if you really want, but like when I feel like I have to eat when I didn't even do anything wrong, I'm like, this just doesn't feel great. So pretty good so far. That's the Baba. Next we have Akka. In almost any other content, Akka's got enough going on that he's more than final boss worthy, perhaps a little too much. We'd like to tone down the intensity of the default fight a tad while maintaining Akka's identity so that he's more fun to interact with as intended if you've not sprouted your butterfly wings yet. Protection prayers now mitigate more damage from Akka. Again, love changes like this, like I just talked about with the chip damage. The stay vigilant invocation is getting a small rework. The change looks as follows. So I actually, I hated stay vigilant. I found it just annoying, so I never ran it. But let's see what it does. Akka will swap styles whenever he uses a special attack, and will use special attacks more often than the base variant. This will mirror the number of specials he uses at the moment with this invocation active. Whenever Akka swaps styles, he'll respect the same predictable order as the base variant's overhead swaps do, rather than swapping randomly. Okay, so this seems way better. Instead of, swapping randomly, it's still going to be in that order. It's just whenever he does specials, he's going to use them more frequently, and it's going to swap styles when he does that instead. Akka now only prays against the style that he's attacking with. Okay. And Akka's stat. Wow, that's interesting. So now instead of having to use the correct style, you now have a choice between 2 styles. So whatever gear you have that's better, as long as you're not using the one he's praying against, you can just attack with that. That's really interesting. Akka's stat drain effect now only affects combat skills. It's minor. Special attacks will occur every 7 attacks rather than every 6 attacks. Obviously, unless you have stay vigilant. So, wow, okay, so that's going to make him feel a lot better, I guess. The number of orbs during Aqua's enraged phase. I'm not saying the other thing. They didn't want to say the cum phase. That's hilarious. Has been reduced. So okay, during the enrage phase, which the community has dubbed the cum phase, they've reduced the amount of orbs in that phase. But the acknowledgement of this is that's gold. Um, wow. Okay, so that's not gonna feel as bad. I feel bad for all the hardcores that died in the final phase, but ultimately the hope here is that the fight at a baseline feels more approachable rather than let my friend butterfly nonstop because the boss is scary. Then drink 14 brews and proc redemption twice during the final phase. Yeah. Butterflying will still be extremely effective if you're willing to learn it. It's not that bad. Go learn it. It's really not bad. I can do a video if you really want. Leave me a comment. But we reckon you'll have a better time versus Akka if you're looking for that fast-paced gear switching action. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It sounds a lot of fun. I'm actually excited, like with Baba and Akka, even just so far. This seems really exciting. I'm excited to go back to TOA. Next Kefri. So these are a little bit less changes. We've got far less to say here than on Baba and Akka, but think we can address some of the biggest pain points with just a handful of tiny tweaks. Here goes. Lower the magic defense on the soldier scarab. That's fine, I guess. Scarabs no longer scale their defense with raid level, and arcane scarabs are guaranteed to move after a certain number of attacks, regardless of those attacks hitting or missing. Okay, that's cool. That seems fine. Kefri was always pretty chill to me, but seems fine. Finally, is the back waves no longer push the player back, but deal 30% more damage. So I'm curious if that doesn't push you back, does it just like go through you? I guess if it doesn't push the player back. But it deals 30% more damage. So these things are gonna fucking rock you, but they're not gonna push you back. So interesting. And then finally, wardens. The skull bombs during P2 can no longer land underneath the active warden or the obelisk. I guess where you can't see them. So little quality change there, but again, it's the small details and it's the polishing of content that I love when it comes to stuff like this. So next, puzzle changes. Ooh, puzzle changes. That's the bosses dealt with. Now let's talk about puzzle rooms. Yeah, just scrap them. Again, just scrap them or put one in the raid at the end before wardens. My opinion. Excuse me. No. Anyway, we've got a handful of tweaks here that should smooth them out a little and have you speeding through puzzles like never before, while also reducing variance a tad in group play. Cursed baboons and baboon shamans on the path of Apmekan will always take maximum damage from ranged attacks, bypassing accuracy. Their HP will be increased slightly to compensate, but this should feel a lot better. Yeah, I mean, it's stuff like this. Someone brought up the idea of like, you could have a boss you could have a boss that has 1 HP. I'm going to use this example just because it came to mind. You could have a boss that has 1 HP, right? But just has a shit ton of defense, and maybe it takes you 3 minutes to finally just hit that 1 HP, right? That's going to feel like shit. Versus if you have a boss that has a ton of HP, but you're constantly hitting, it's just more fun. So there's things like this where they can add that it always takes maximum damage from ranged attacks, but it has slightly increased HP. That, excuse me again, it just makes the game feel better. So that's cool. 2 waves of monkey assailants will be removed from the path of Apmekan. That's fantastic. No one likes this puzzle. So 2 of the monkey assailant waves are removed. That's fantastic. The amount of water required for Path of Krondus something, no longer scales linearly with the number of players, meaning there's less pressure on your beginner friends to get it right or be stuck watching a cheeky crocodile undoing all your hard work. Yeah, so that's cool. In the Zabek room now, it doesn't scale with the number of players, which is cool. So makes that one a little less high stakes, if you will, when it comes to doing this with friends, and you guys can just kind of fly through that one. It was always already quick as is, but and then lastly, the hit points on the obelisk on the path of Het are slightly reduced so that 1 downs don't require boosting above 99 mining. This is in reference to the Akka puzzle room, if you don't recognize the path names. But when you're doing that, even at 99 mining, sometimes you don't one down it. You have to like spec above 99 mining, and then like I use piety as well. I don't know if that actually does anything, but you have to like spec above 99 mining, which is ridiculous because 99 mining is like already a pretty big grind. So now if you have 99 mining and everyone does, if you're doing a solo or everyone does in a group, you don't have to boost above to one down it. So that's cool. And then some miscellaneous changes to address some other common frustrations. Here are some tweaks that don't fit neatly into the above categories. The big pot in the Nexus will become a fully functional deposit box. Okay, I mean that's fine. I don't think it needs to be a deposit box, but that works too. Any drain stats will be restored at the end of a boss fight. That's cool. Smelling salts will reapply their boost as they expire. I guess if you have other smelling salts, maybe I want to hold on to mine. I don't know about this one. This one, sometimes like if I only have 2 things of smelling salts, I'll wait on purpose until like certain phases to use the second one. So I don't know if they want to use, if I want mine to reapply, but it should be fine, I guess. But that's the only one in there that I'm like iffy on. And then loot changes. I know this is a longer video, guys, but we got a big blog post here. Naturally, it's hard to talk about TOA without talking about its uniques and loot. We spoke about adjustments to regular loot in the previous section, but we want to hear from you regarding uniques. Before we start, it's important to say that this is something we've had our eyes on for a while. Changes above will make the raid faster, but we believe loot here is already problematic and don't want to hold off on making the raid better because we're apprehensive about making changes to loot. Yeah, I agree. That's pretty good. On release, we received a lot of feedback around higher raid levels not feeling particularly worthwhile, which we did act upon and likely overcorrected. Add on top of that all the changes over the years and the player skill improvements that make higher raid levels easier and easier, and we have one of the best melee weapons in the game sitting below 10 mil GP. And one of the strongest rings in the game at around 2 mil GP. Yeah, this is why you playtest things and use foresight to fucking view this stuff. Anyway, while it's not quite as drastic, if the Scythe of Viter was sitting at a price of 20 mil GP, we're sure you'd agree that it would be damaging for both Theater of Blood and the wider game. Yeah. Of course, the Fang isn't as good as the Scythe, but there are still many places where it shines or is a close second, and we believe its value is too far south of where it should be for it to be healthy. It might be the case that we've waited too long to make a meaningful change here, but we believe it's better to try and make changes for long-term benefit than to hold up our hands and say it's too late. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that, like better late than never sort of thing. Do that and then learn from it in the future sort of deal. We've waited far too long to make changes here. It's hard to have these conversations because they're always emotionally charged and can be difficult to feel like we're righting the ship. But at this point, we've had more than enough time to reflect and understand the impact that TOA's unique rates and weightings have on the wider economy and on player progression. Yeah, again, better late than never. But yeah, they definitely, this is long overdue. All that to say, we're looking to make some changes. Exactly what those changes are isn't something we've landed on yet. We have options and we're open to suggestions, which is why we're asking you to talk to us about what you think is the best path forward. We could swap the weightings of the Fang and Lightbearer with a Lidinous Ward. We could reduce some of the loot scaling at the top end. We could blanket reduce purple chance across the board. No. There's a lot we could do, so let us know where your heads are at, and we'll make sure to detail exactly what we will do ahead of time. Yeah, I mean, this one's tricky, right? Because like there's definitely like the Fang's definitely too common. I think, oh man. I mean, I think if anything, maybe like making changes where like they're just significantly more rare on lower invocations. So like if you don't have any invocations on, these should be almost impossible to get, right? Like the fact that you can get a shadow from a 0 invo raid is just complete bullshit. I think if anything, you shouldn't be able to get any uniques from a 0 invo raid. Is that crazy to say. Like, I think you almost need to have this conversation of like people get shit at 0 input rates, and like granted it's rare, but it definitely happens, and like that should be something where like, hey, where they'll say, hey, we'll give you loot, we'll even give you the purples, but they're almost impossible to get, right? Like I would say like double or triple the rarity at like 0 invos, and then scale it not linearly, but scale it in a way that makes more sense where it's definitely more rewarding at 150 and 300 and 500. Um like I like stuff like Shadow and Masoria, you shouldn't be able to get that unless you're doing expert level raids. Um at 300 plus. And then like that's what I would say is probably your best bet. Like you don't want to make these like impossible to get, but like even like a 150 raid, like take out Shadow, take out Masori. You can get your Linus Ward, your Thread, your Fang, your Lightbearer, but don't don't even give the option of getting stuff like the Shadow and Masori realistically until you start doing 300s. And then take out like make it so you can get these things at 0, but like just make them so rare, like chambers level rare, if not rare, when you're doing zeros where it's just not feasible. Um, so yeah, I think that's probably the best change because you want them to stay relatively the same, but you need less coming into the game, and I think the best way to do that is doing it that way. Other combat and PVM focused changes, getting there, guys. So, oh man, I see like the word Fosanis, and I'm just intrigued. For the rest of this blog, we'll be covering a lot of different types of content where changes to elemental weaknesses and NPC defense are far more broad. Every section from here on out is about a specific piece of content in old school. If you're an expert or consider yourself very knowledgeable about anything mentioned throughout the rest of today's post, then get in touch and share your thoughts with us in all the usual places. First up, the infamous Fosani's Nightmare. It wouldn't be a follow-on from Project Rebalance if we weren't talking about the Nightmare again. Yeah. Mechanically, Fosani's Nightmare is one of the most enjoyable solo encounters in the game for many players. She boasts loads of interesting attacks with clear telegraphs and can be killed in very budget gear with next to no damage taken if done properly. That said, the fight can drag a little with its 4 near identical phases before the frantic finale. We reckon the pace of the encounter could be improved, so we'd like to outright remove one of the earlier phases from the fight. This means you'd expect 2 normal phases, third phase with the prayer disable mechanic, and then the final phase. I guess right now, you have 3 normal phases instead. We'd also be looking to adjust combat achievement times to compensate, but don't know exactly what those times might look like at this stage. Yeah, that makes sense. We will not be adjusting drop rates alongside this change. Our hope here is that the fight just feels better, meaning you'll feel more inclined to stick it out for those big ticket uniques if you're rolling the dice more times per hour with a less fatiguing encounter. Yeah, I mean that definitely seems pretty good. I would say you can go down that route or you can just make it more common. Like this to me, because there's one less phase, says, hey, the boss is now easier because it doesn't take as long to kill, and you're eliminating a whole phase, making the time to kill quicker and the room for error smaller, right? If you make the drop rate better now, instead of it just being an easier fight because of the fact that it's quicker, you now have the same kind of integrity of the fight itself, the same time, in terms of time to kill, so the high scores stay the way they are, but you'll be able to bring these uniques into the game a little faster. So I'd rather just do that, but this also isn't the worst thing in the world. I wouldn't be mad if they introduced that as well. So one of those two, I think the drop rate buff would be better, but this is pretty cool too. All right, next we have next. So put a little T there or something. Keeping on theme, we've got another end game encounter that could see some improvements. One of the foremost complaints about Nex is that taking her down can feel like a bit of a brew simulator due to lots of chip damage. Again, talked about that earlier. Hate chip damage. Unpredictable aggro swaps, unpredictable attack patterns in certain phases. Yeah, I mean, and few opportunities to heal up without sacrificing DPS. Yeah, this is why everybody hates next. Which in turn elongates the fight and needs you to heal up even more. We've got a handful of tweaks to improve the feel of the fight, including some that should let skilled groups reduce their incoming damage so long as they're coordinated. Allow players to deal reduced damage past Nexus phase transitions up to a threshold so that they don't run into the feels bad damage nulling effect. And mass groups will likely hit these thresholds easily, but won't see noticeable reductions in kill times, since they're already so fast, while small teams will be able to keep on hitting without feeling like they're completely wasting their time. So, alright, so yeah, I mean, this feels bad damage nulling effect is definitely something that anytime you have something that feels like that, it's just better to, like they said, allow to deal reduced damage past Nexus phase transitions up to a threshold. That's already gonna just make the fight feel better as is, and they still have other adjustments. Adjust some of the behaviors during downtime phases to let players heal up without feeling punished. We'll achieve this by letting players heal from damage dealt to Blood Reavers, though we're open to further changes if absolutely necessary. Yeah, I mean that's cool. It just adds I guess it adds options to let players heal up without feeling punished, which is pretty good as well. Make her melee attack a little stickier during all phases. This means that if next uses a melee attack, she'll use 2 more before swapping, similar to the change you made to monodials in 2023. Okay. So if you get meleeed, you can be confident that he's going to melee you twice more before swapping, so you can keep prey melee on. That's pretty cool. Additionally, reduce the damage dealt by her magic attack in the final phase if you turn on Protect from Magic late, meaning even if you're not praying already, you can still mitigate damage a little with quick reactions. We're not looking to drastically adjust next as a fight, but think that providing you more avenues to reduce incoming damage might make things feel a little more engaging without trivializing the encounter entirely. Let us know what you think about these, especially if you're a fan of taking on next in groups of 2 to 5 players. Yeah, I mean, I would argue that you don't want to drastically adjust it, but I feel like you could adjust it even more than this. I'm not sure, like, quite how you're going to do that. I think probably the best example is reducing chip damage, but overall, I mean, the fact that they're adjusting it all is pretty good and saying, hey, we know this isn't fun, we're going to make it a little bit more fun. Next, I'm really interested in this one. I haven't heard much about this. Moving away from the end game for a moment, but sticking with a boss that's usually taken down in masses or a small team, we're heading to Varlamore to take a look at the fearsome Huey Kotal. To start with, we'd like to improve the tail phase a little with clear visuals and bring down the tail's hit points so that you can get back to hitting Huey in the face and body again, which is what you're all there for. I mean, we're there for the fight in and of itself, but sure. What's a little more complicated is figuring out who Huey is for. As far as unique equipment drops go, you can snag yourself a Dragon Hunter wand and some Huey Kotal hide to make a nifty set of armor. Problem with the wand is often outperformed by other setups for mid-level players against dragons, and dragons aren't killed all that often either, beyond draconic bosses like the King Black Dragon, Vorkath, Alchemical Hydra, or Great Olm. By the time you're tackling these foes, you're likely sporting better gear to boot. This makes it a niche weapon that's on the weaker side, which is also a hefty grind for Huey's target audience. Not good. Yeah. Yeah, any niche weapons that are weaker and also a big grind like that is definitely not great. We'd like to boost the wand's power, improve its drop rate, and make some adjustments to the Huey Kotal hide too, so that they sit in a better spot for the kinds of players who Huey's aimed at. To achieve this, we'd like to do the following. Alright, let's see. Bonus damage versus dragons increased from 20 to 40%. 40% for the wand. That's crazy. That seems like just ludicrous, but wait 1 second, guys. I apologize. All right. That seems insane to go from 20 to 40%. Bonus accuracy versus dragons increased from 50 to 75%. That also seems just super high. but this is crazy, dude. So damage or yeah, damage is gonna go from 20% to 40% and accuracy from 50 to 75. That seems like way overtuned, but maybe that's all right. I would almost rather see this go from like 20 to like 30 and go from like 50 to 60. And if they need to buff it further, just continue to buff it after that. Ability to autocast ancients. That's cool. This one's not all that useful against dragons, but might have a niche use for some blood barrage antics on extended trips. Though we expect more players would be making use of elemental weaknesses while tackling dragons. In the wider game, it's a pretty nice starting point to get those burst slash barrage slayer tasks kicking. Yeah, I like that. Make the wand three times as common, meaning you'd see one in every 69 kills rather than 207 if you're soloing. Using numbers from the wiki, loot tables for group bosses can be confusing at times. This is probably the easiest way of showing off the change. I don't know if it needs to be tripled, but because my problem here is if you triple it, you can't go back. I mean, you can, but you're gonna piss people off. So I would rather see it go from like 207 down to like a 1 in like 125, and if you need to boost it further to like 69, you just can. Um, but I mean, I'll take that. I mean, this weapon is gonna be crazy once this comes in. Improve the drop rate of Huey Kotal Hide from 1 in 35 to 1 in 30. Yeah, see, this is a little bit more of a manageable change. Upon receiving a hide drop, you'll always receive 3. And finally, lower the crafting requirement of the hide armor, meaning it's easier to make than black dragon hide, but is harder to obtain. I think that's pretty on point. It allows you to make it if you can manage to get it, but it also like incentivizes, hey, if you have this crafting level, which is actually easier than black dragon hide, go get the Huey Kotal hide. Coupled with the Great Olm being given an earth elemental weakness, we think this should position the Dragon Hunter wand as a much more impactful unlock, though it'll still get outperformed by higher tier powered staves later on in your journey, befitting its rarity and its relatively niche use cases. Yeah, I mean, this is good overall. I think these are just super high numbers, and if they've play tested it and looked into it, maybe it's all right. But I'm curious to see where this is gonna fit in, with it being just this much stronger. Now let's move a short distance west to Nepotsley and the Moons of Peril. So I think this is the last thing here, guys. A couple other things, but we are getting there. If you've watched this long, you're amazing. It's such a long video. Most of what we're looking to do here is a quality of life pass. We'd like to improve the click boxes of the moons themselves, since their movement can sometimes make them a little annoying to click on in the midst of combat, and we'd like to take another pass at the fishing and hunter activities within Potsley, since they can be a little buggy from time to time. For some more specific changes, the most impactful here is reducing the number of tornadoes during the Blue Moon's special Brazier phase. As it stands, there's an awful lot of tornadoes which deal some damage, heal the boss, and contribute to you getting chilled, which means that some players opt not to engage with the mechanic at all and take a breather instead. We think toning it down a little should make the mechanic at least feel worth engaging. Yeah, definitely. While not strictly related to the Moons of Peril, we'd also like to explore adding a new reward to aid players getting into it. Offering powerful armor sets and weapons in all 3 styles, the moons have become a staple progression point for many players, but even with damage mitigating strategies like step unders, it's still possible to take a real beating here, even while wearing your tankiest gear. To that end, we'd like to add a defense-focused ring somewhere to aid players in racking up kill count, while giving some use to a boss that doesn't offer much at the moment. The Deranged Archaeologist. Wow, okay. So this right off the start during the Blue Moon's special phase, that's a really good quality of life change. And it's good that they recognize something like that. But now on top of that, we're getting a new ring from the Deranged Archaeologist as well, and it says no imbue needed. With this, what you see is what you get. So right off the bat, you get a 20 defense in stab, slash, and crush. And then I actually want to take a look real quick at the of suffering and just see where it fits. So the base one looks like it has plus 10, and if you imbue it, This is better than just a default Ring of Suffering. It's plus 20, but it gives plus 20 in defense of magic and range. So I think this, depending on how rare this is a little strong when it comes to defense. I mean that matches a Ring of Suffering when it comes to melee defense, which I think is kind of crazy. Um, but overall, I mean, this seems pretty good. I could see it being like if you want to get really nitpicky, you could see like a plus 15 in stab, slash, and crush instead of 20 because that matches the suffering, the imbued suffering at that. Um, but overall, I mean that's pretty good. This might step on the toes of the Ring of Suffering a little bit, yeah, but the Suffering still has range defense, magic defense, prayer bonus, and a recoil effect on top, with its value being largely tied to other Zenite jewelry. We're pretty confident this shouldn't harm the Ring of Suffering's position in the game. I don't think it'll harm it, but in terms of like a melee defense ring, I don't think it should match the Ring of Suffering, considering how, I guess, how much harder it is to get. Like, the Ranged Archaeologist is not a difficult fight. Since we're on the topics of defense-oriented rings, we think the Granite Ring could stand to be a little stronger when considering its source, so we'd like to bump its numbers up a little bit. So, it's going to go up to 16. Range defense seems to be the main bonus here, with the melee defense going up to 4. I mean, that's fine. If they want to buff that a little bit, that's cool. Lastly, this one's interesting. I glanced over this. This is going to be an interesting topic here. So, Obor, Bryophyta, and Keys. This is something we wanted to do alongside the Royal Titans, but didn't have time to implement as we'd have liked. It's no secret that the key system used to fight Obor and Bryophyta isn't the most well liked, particularly if you're gated out of combat achievements because you've not done your shift at the Hill or Moss Giants. See, I don't think these take that long to get. I really don't. They're there, but I mean, you definitely can farm them pretty easily. On the flip side, their uniques are valuable for the tier of players that they're aimed at. And would likely plummet in value if they were freely obtainable. Plus, it's nice to have the occasional "oh cool" moment if you're on a Hill or Moss Giant Slayer task. That means we need to find a way to open the bosses up a little, protect their uniques, and retain some use case for keys that players might already have or obtain in the future. Here's what we've cooked up. Obor and Bryophyta no longer require a key to be fought. See, this is extremely controversial in my eyes. I know that there's a lot of players that, especially when it comes to the high scores, even in free to play, specifically have grinded this up to, I think, 10,000 kills. I'm looking specifically at the podcast Sebe did with Tanner Dino, where he just has a ton of these keys. And it says like they still want to protect their uniques, but in terms of like the high scores, to just no longer require a key just completely opens this up to just be a free for all for the high scores, which I think some players who have put the time in to get these keys are really going to have a problem with. I personally don't care because it's not something that that I've spent time doing, but if I would want to see what these players think, because they've spent a lot of time to work up their high scores and grind these keys out to have that spot. So if there's some backlash on this one, I would fully be in support to still require keys to be used to fight these two bosses. Next, Obor and Bryo can drop their own respective keys, and to compensate, each of them is giving a reduced simple loot table. This loot table is similar to the regular Giants variant, with a chance at Giant Bones, members only, for a chunk of prayer XP when buried, and they cannot be offered to altars, and an increased chance for each boss's respective key. Inside each of their layers is a chest requiring a giant or mossy key to open, whose loot table is the same as the existing one. This chest can only be opened after the boss is defeated. We reckon this solution ticks all of the bases outlined above, so let us know if we've missed any key details. Yeah, so I mean, this is definitely interesting. again, I would just want to hear from the people who actually give a shit about this sort of thing. If it's a big problem and they don't want it, I would vote against something like this, even though it says that this isn't going to be pulled. Um, so hopefully they don't mind too much. I know I don't, but um, and then it's weird. Like they drop a key to open the chest in order to get the uniques for these. So definitely kind of weird. I feel like this would be kind of fun to just sit there and kill the boss over and over, and then when you get a key, you can go for the unique sort of thing. It seems fun. I just worry that it's a little late for this. I checked; these came out like 9 years ago, so you have players that really enjoy the way these work now. So I don't know how this is going to be received. Like I said, I would support the players that think that it should stay the same if it's really that big of a deal. If they have an issue with it, I would support them. I don't care personally, but um this will be interesting. This will be interesting for sure. Next we have Cerberus. Who let the dogs out? Fortunately, not the Keymaster. He's got Cerberus under lock and key ready for your Hellhound Slayer tasks. Oh god, what are they doing to Cerberus? If you guys don't know, it took me 3,052 kills to get my primordial crystal. Over the years and over the course of many Hellhound Slayer tasks, it's become clear that Cerberus isn't everybody's cup of tea, but we reckon a few small tweaks could drastically improve the feel of the boss. So they're gonna adjust the lava pool attack so that it's easier to react to or predict. Thank God, dude. I'm done at Cerberus. I still have to get the pet, I guess, but this is always such a pain in the ass. Reduce the radius so that they only deal damage on the tile where they spawned. Yeah, right now it does a 3x3 and it's a pain in the ass. So that's pretty good. I like that. I don't necessarily think it needs to be adjusted when it comes to the radius, but the react to or predict is definitely needed. This goes back to again the chip damage thing I talked about earlier. Slightly improve the drop rate of Keymaster Teleport Scrolls so that it's more feasible to break even if you're doing extended trips. It's cool. Make Keymaster Teleport Scrolls tradable in line with other Teleport Scrolls. Don't have a problem with that. Adjust the Word of Arceus to provide reduced incoming prayer drain from demons by 30%. This is targeted at Cerberus's Ghost Attack, but has uses at other demons too. I mean, I would have liked this when I was actually, killing Cerberus, but again, better late than never. That seems really cool. This one stems from a player suggestion that we thought was pretty cool and cropped up while writing this post. We'd rather give players active solutions to problems than just remove them entirely. Cerberus has been killed hundreds of thousands of times, and most primordial crystal seekers have long since recovered from their prayer potion squeeze. Yeah, that was an interesting grind. Like I said, it took me 3,000 kills to get the primordial crystal. So this stacks with the Spectral Spirit Shield if you're lucky enough to own one. Wow. Okay, so if you have a Spectral Spirit Shield and use the Word of Arceus, that will stack, and you won't get drained nearly as much at all. So overall, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, it would have been nice if these changes were implemented when I was going for the Primordial Crystal, but again, better late than never. I like the changes I'm seeing here. And almost at the end here, we have Duke. No preamble needed. We couldn't rightfully talk about Duke without talking about the prep phase. In the latest league, we effectively allowed players to prep infinitely, which we think made sense given the speed of kills made possible during Raging Echoes. For the main game, we don't think infinite prep is the way to go. Before you raise your pitchforks, hear us out. This isn't a case of us wanting to see you suffer, but Duke as an encounter was designed with both the fight itself and the prep phase in mind. We don't think that the fight alone holds up well enough that it makes sense to do an absolute boatload of prep and repeat a super simple fight over and over without the variety of a little spot of gathering to break things up. Yeah, I don't think it should be infinite. Or that you should be able to just grab a boatload of prep and repeat the fight. But it would be nice to prep a little bit more here. So, it seems like that's what they're doing. Having said all that, we know we could strike a better balance. Yeah. So we'd like to propose letting you prepare for 3 kills in advance, meaning you can hold enough raw resources to produce 6 vials of Ardor Musca poison. This means you could do a slightly longer prep phase to set you up for a number of kills, which should at least be a step towards reducing the time spent prepping for players who aren't a fan. The only thing I see with this is that it's going to affect the time to kill. Yeah. Naturally, this means that kills per hour will increase, so we'll be bumping Duke's HP up by 10% to compensate. Since we think Duke's time to complete. Sorry, since we think Duke's time to complete is in a reasonable position, it doesn't need much speeding up. We expect this one to generate some chatter. Let us know if you reckon the balance here is about right, or if you think you've got something better that keeps all of the above factors in mind. The only issue I have with bumping the HP up is now you feel like you have to prep 3 in a row, which I guess people are going to want to do anyway because it's just better quality of life. But I would almost like, how do I explain it? Instead of having to make the potions over and over, the poison should be a 6 dose if you grab all the resources. So I don't have to do any additional prepping to get this. Just give me a potion that has 6 doses where I can use it twice on them, and in each fight it'll last like 3 fights. Where if I have a 6 dose potion, it'll last 3 fights, and make it so I can only hold 1. I don't want to have to like grab a bunch of stuff. Because then you have to like drop items, have the inventory space, blah blah blah. Like let me just like grab my 2 from each side like usual, do a little mining thing, and have a 6 dose potion, or change it where you don't need 2 doses. Just make it 1 dose to fight it, and make the potion you get a 3 dose potion where you can just use it after each fight. So I would imagine you go do the prep phase once, you get your little 3 dose potion, go and kill Duke. Once you're ready, you use the potion on him again, fight him again, grab your loot, fight him again. Then you go do the prep phase. The only other thing I don't like when it comes to this is the light bearer tech, where after each fight, throw on your light bearer, go do the prep phase, you restore a bunch of spec, and then you fight it again. I guess you technically could still do this, but it's gonna feel bad if you have the option to do the 3 kill per prep phase method. And if it's bumping the HP up by 10%, you're not gonna want to do anything other than the 3 kill prep method. So it kind of retracts from like the light bearer thing, but whatever. It seems like it's a little bit more fun. Other changes, I like this overall. It's just there's certain things that I don't like. Other changes. So this is the end here, guys. Sorry. All right. While we've taken the time to give a little more detail on the headlines, we have a handful of other changes that we'd like to make that shouldn't need all that much explaining. Ready yourself for a rapid fire list. Increase the range of the Nulls ticks of Ralos by 1. This sounds small, but should open up some new use cases and improve existing ones for this strong but niche spec weapon. That's pretty cool. Allow halberds to hit flying enemies like aviancies. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's gonna be pretty fun. That makes sense though. It's a halberd. Allow demon bane weaponry to work on the ice demon at the chambers of Zarek. Fire surge should still remain the most effective way of dispatching this demonic foe, but this is a niche. This is a nice alternative if you're willing to sacrifice an inventory space. Add some kind of indicator drop for successful rolls on the vestige vestiges dropped by Desert Treasure 2 bosses. Each vestige requires 3 invisible rolls going on behind the scenes. We'd like to add some kind of drop, gold ring for example, that lets you know when you've hit a roll on the vestige. If you've already hit 1 or 2 out of the 3 rolls, you'll receive an indicator of your progress on your next kill. Effectively, this doesn't change anything about how soon you'll obtain your vestige, but you'll know how close you are. That's so good. I only have the Ultor one right now. I'm in the process of doing Yama for Oathplate, and then I'm gonna go back to Duke. So that would be really cool to know how close you are. I would imagine if you don't have any indicators, it'll also just feel bad because you'll know you're at 0 out of 3. But knowing, I guess, is better than not knowing. So I really like that. Players with the Grandmaster Combat Achievements completed will be able to show their Zuck Helm to the Tazar and gain on-task damage bonuses without any of the other on-task benefits. Wow. For those speedrunners out there. So they're completely scrapping tutorial skipping for the for players who have Grandmaster Combat Achievements and want to do Inferno speedruns. Wow, that's gonna be really interesting. I'm curious to see how the Grandmaster community and speedrunning community reacts to that, because it's gonna be way easier now to go for Inferno speedruns. That's actually huge. That's insane. That's a massive change. But I think in terms of speedrunning, that's a pretty good change for what I understand, from what I can tell. You're not gonna get the other on task benefits, but if you just want the damage bonus, you'll be able to go and speedrun the Inferno now with the Grandmaster combat achievements done. My only issue with that is for the players that want to do the speedrunning but don't have a Grandmaster. It's gonna really make things a little challenging for them, because they're gonna still have to get the task, but they already have to do that. So a little extra reward for the Grandmasters out there. That's pretty cool. And the Grandmaster combat achievement reward that increases the duration of summon thralls to 2 minutes will be moved down to Master. Whoa! Okay. This is probably the reward that feels the most impactful and the most frustrating of the rewards to lose on a new release, so we'd like to bump it down to alleviate frustrations from Grandmaster players and make something that feels impactful just a smidge more attainable. So I was going to go for Master achievements anyway pretty soon. I'm on the Elite tier. But wow, they're going to change it so the thralls go to 2 minutes. It doesn't say what they're going to do with the 1.5 one. I guess they're just going to scrap that and it just goes to 2 minutes. That's going to be really good quality of life for the Master combat achievement players. So wow, and then tidy up the magic attack animations from spells and powered staves in PVM scenarios so that so that they don't visually delay the player's movement. Okay. Wow, so these two especially, that's crazy changes that we're seeing now, guys. Lots of good stuff in here. And this was a long video. That's a wrap. There's loads to unpack here. We expect there's going to be a lot of discussion and perhaps updated blogs in the near future. I'll be sure to cover it if you want to check them out and talk about it in the near future. Give us everything you've got and let us know how you're feeling about the first part of this year's summer sweep up. Wow, so the first part. So we're going to get even more changes. So that's exciting. Lots of good stuff in this blog post. Big summer sweep up blog post. And yeah, I mean that's gonna do it. If you guys have made it this far, leave a comment saying that you watched the whole video. I appreciate it greatly, and I will see you next time.